right. Origin story, part 2. Paul's going to lead us off.
There was one of your early recordings here that you played on was that Badly White EP. Mm-hmm. And the aforementioned Bill Grabowski was also involved in that. And there were production things on there, like there were production-y ideas. And this is in the 80s.
Yeah.
When records, like, you know, are huge records, and they require computers that people don't have.
Right.
And you guys were doing production-y things with that. And I was just like, what is that? So I think it might have even been the first song. It has this just a break after a kind of an intro riff kind of thing that goes chick, chick, and it's kind of like the cock of a gun, but it was just like left, right, or right, left or something.
Right on.
And you told me later that you literally recorded it twice and panned it differently and edited it together and, you know, just edited it on the tape. And I just thought that was like the coolest thing.
Yeah.
So like, can you say like how you even got into that, you know, because you knew Grabowski.
Yeah.
And you were here and you were recording Jeff and Ronnie and those guys.
Yep.
And like, how did you kind of get into it?
Well, like I said, the dynamic was Scott Berger was doing a lot of the engineering side, and Bill was the producer person. And in the context of Badly White, that became the Badleys, they were in here making an EP of songs, and you know, it was just kind of it's like anything. It's like the reason I learned how to play mandolin or dulcimer or even piano or anything else, or bass or anything, was just because you're here late at night, you're by yourself. There aren't many mandolin players laying around in Northumberland,
right?
You know, and you want it on your record, so then you pick it up and you start putting it in there, you know. So that was kind of, it was from starting, you and I both starting our career in the studio, not with a band,
right? You
know what I mean? Like you started the career in the studio, so you're making records, and the records need a lot more things than a 4-piece band does playing Moni Moni or something.
Exactly.
You know, I mean, it's like you need other things so you gather these other skills because there's nobody else friggin' here.
Right. It's just not a necessity.
And then you know, like I had Bill, because at the time, you know, it wasn't like you're cutting things up in a computer and it's real easy and you cut paste, you know, like and do it in 10 seconds.
Yeah.
It was like you're doing it with a razor blade and a tape.
Yeah.
Piece of tape.
Right.
So I got really into doing that, you know, where, you know, you kind of like would say, okay, well, you know, okay, here's the song, and it's like, wow, well, let's take out all these parts and let's just like open with the drums going, chop, you know, like this. And then it was like, well, wow, that sounds cool at the beginning of the song. Okay, solo all that up, take everything out, chop, okay, record it, boom, cut it, move it to the front of the song, like physically with a piece of tape, move it to the front of the song, get out a little piece of tape, put it on there. You know what I mean? And then, okay, now, poocha, jing, diddling, diddling, you know, then that's the song. You know, it was not played that way.
Right. And as soon as there was any kind of tape to do that, people were cutting up and doing exactly that.
Yeah.
And I had learned how to cut tape at school. Yeah. And I had done that, but I hadn't done it creatively like you were doing it here.
Yeah,
and it was like blowing my mind. I mean, you have to understand, it's like there's no computers. You know, if you had an idea, you had to physically make it happen.
Yeah. Like,
I mean, Bill had an emulator too.
Yeah,
but that's not solving every problem.
But you couldn't like arrange, like in a computer, you can just grab all the tracks, cut them up, put them at the front, and it's 10 seconds. It's easy. But at the time, you had to make a physical entity that you would hang on the wall. Like if you see like studios in the 80s, you'll see all these long pieces of tape hanging on the wall.
With little notes.
Notes of what they are. You know, okay, that's the chorus.
Second chorus.
Yeah, and that's what people did. I mean, there's a story that Bill told me, and well, Bill had a history with John Bon Jovi. So, and I don't have, you know, fact check me on this, but
right on.
But I know he was like a roommate with him, and he worked at the power station in New York.
Yeah, he did.
And he said, and Tony Bon Jovi, his uncle.
Yes, his uncle. Yeah.
Yeah, was sort of, I mean, that was his place. The power station.
Power station. Yeah.
Yeah, in the city, and Tony had, I believe, maybe I'm wrong, but I believe he had been a Motown engineer or something, or he'd been an engineer somewhere previous to the power station. You know, like he had a history, and I can't remember what album it was, but he said there was this one album that like an assistant, because like what they would do is they would store these albums, like you'd have your whole album, it'd be on like 1/4-inch tape or 1/2-inch tape, 1/4-inch tape at that time, 1/4-inch tape. So then they would store it on a pancake. So the pancake would just be like just raw tape without
the flanges,
without the covers.
The cover,
you know, so like if you picked it up, it would just fall to the ground.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, so you had to have it on this pancake, and then you put it on. Then you'd put the pancake on the machine, then you'd put the flanges on top of it so it didn't fall out.
Right on.
And then you would string it across. And this is probably really geeky and old school for anybody.
My favorite.
Did not grow up with this way of doing things, but that's the way it was done. So, but anyway, but he said like at one point an assistant came in and there was this pancake laying there, and he thought, and the assistant thought that it was garbage. They thought, because like they'd leave the pancakes there of like just scrap stuff,
scrap tape,
rough mixes and whatever, and they just get rid of it. And the way to get rid of it was to like take it up and hold it up and go
with a razor blade. And just cut right through the whole
through the whole thing,
the whole reel of tape.
So then so it turns out, and it was like somebody like Diana Ross or something. That was their master. And the assistant came in and took this thing and went right? And it falls into the garbage. So this is like a finished album. This is like not something you can like, you know, shift, undo, you know.
There's no undo.
No, it's undo. Like they just took her master and nuked it.
Into the garbage. So you know, just this is an illustration of what happens, you know. So then like what they figured out is, well, as he cut into it, the lengths of tape would get smaller and smaller as they like wound to the next.
As they wound into the tape.
Yeah.
So basically they got these big, like, you know, like sheets out in the studio, and they set it up and they just like took the entire thing and went, you know, in a V shape.
Lined it all up in a V shape.
Lined it all up in a V shape.
And then taped it back together.
Taped it back together piece by piece. And then like, but the thing is, like, the intrigue is that like, let's say it was Diana Ross. I don't have confirmation on that, but she was coming in that afternoon to listen to it.
Right on.
So they're like, you know, so they're, you know, taping away, trying to get this thing put back together.
Yeah.
And they get it all put back together, and they have like, you know, like an assistant or an engineer like stand in front of the tape machine while they're playing it, so they can't see the edits flying by.
Right.
You know, but like, and like every time an edit goes by, you don't hear it in the audio, but it's like, fing, 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 fing.
On the machine.
Yeah, like, so it makes this sound.
Yeah.
So this machine's going, fing, 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 fing. They're like turning it up, you know.
Yeah, head of the labels there.
Yeah, and they got it.
Yeah.
And they got away with it. But I mean, that's what you did back then. I mean, like you cut tape, you know.
Well, that's what intrigued me about like all the stuff that you knew from being here. I mean, we're the same age within 6 months.
Yeah, same year.
But you graduated from high school and college a year ahead of me. And so, so you had been here, but it seemed to me like you had been here for like years.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and like the edit thing, like I remember doing all those edits, and I like just got into it.
Yeah.
And I just got into it, and I'd get excited, and I'd like do all these editing and creative ideas. Like even on the Badly White stuff, I was doing that, and like, and Bill was like all into it. He was like, "Oh, this is great."
Yeah.
But I remember like this is like very, very early on. Like Ron's the drummer, right?
Right.
And like Ron doesn't like
Ron the drummer is the drummer.
Ron the drummer is
same
the drummer.
Ron.
Same Ron as today. And like I remember like Ron, like, you know, he might not even remember this, but I remember him being like, you know, the songs are fine. You know what I mean? It's like, he was like, why are you doing all these edits? Why are you messing with this? You know, we already recorded it. It was great. Now, you know, not that he didn't like dislike it. It was just kind of like, well,
no, he's like, what are you doing?
Yeah, what are you doing?
We recorded this thing.
We're almost done. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was it.
That was it. You were like, no, trust me, it's going to have like an impact when you know, it's for the song.
Yeah, it was for the song. Yeah. So, but it was, I mean, it was, okay, I'm going to redirect one more tiny story.
Oh, right.
With Ronnie. But it was wild because like I went to Ronnie Well, I'll back up. I have a sister, my sister Sheila. She's 4 years younger than me. Mm-hmm. I took her to her first concert. It was at Mansfield University in Pennsylvania.
Oh.
And the band playing was John Cafferty, the Beaver Brown Band.
Beaver Brown Band.
Yeah, and Sheila like went flying up to the front. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And then like the opener comes out and starts playing, and it's like, you know, they start with this drum groove and blah blah blah. Well, it turns out that the drummer was Ron. And the sax player was Terry Selders, who was our manager for years, for a decade and a half. So like Sheila, like her first like glimpse of a rock star on a big stage
was Ronnie.
Was Ronnie, yeah. My little sister, yeah. So. And he had those like Lifesaver Vistalite drums.
No, he had the Vistalite drums.
Yeah, I remember those.
Ludwig Vistalites.
Yeah, but they were like those Lifesaver.
Yeah, they were like red and yellow and green.
Yeah. He had those
and orange.
And our manager of, you know, over a decade, you know, like Terry's up there playing the saxophone.
Terry's like,
yeah, and he's up there, and it was J.R. Mangan.
Oh,
was the band.
JR's band.
Yeah.
Wow, you see that? More stories to come. So Ronnie's playing this thing. Sheila, this is, you know, you have no connection to Ron.
None. No.
You have no connection to Ron.
He's
you
in
go
school.
see
He's in college.
John Cafferty. Ronnie, the drummer, is opening up. You're back to the studio. You're engineering and helping with the Badly White stuff. What happened when you started playing guitar on that record, that EP? Because you never really, like, as an artist, as a guitar player, I mean, you really hadn't done official recording, right? Or had you done recording before that?
Yeah, a little bit, but very limited.
Because that seems to me like, oh wow, I mean, Grabowski's here. You know, it's like, this is like a kind of a real thing. We're trying to make something cool. So, like, what was that like, and how did you fit into that?
Well, I mean, I just wanted to be there. I wanted to, you know, like, that's the thing, is I was just like, I wanted to be in that room as much as I could, you know what I mean? Like, and I was just here all the time. And that's the way most people in, like, engineering, production, blah, 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 their career starts, is they're just always there, and like somebody gets sick, somebody can't make it, and you end up in the seat, you know, like, I gotta go pee, jump in, you know.
Yeah, where persistence and opportunity.
Yeah,
cross.
you know, I mean, like the engineer says, I gotta step out, I gotta take a phone call, whatever, and then like, can you, you know, you've been here a while, you can do this, and then then it's like, well, hey, it's going well, I'm gonna go get a sandwich, you know.
Yeah.
And then you're in, you know, then it kind of builds from there.
Yeah.
And I was just kind of like, they were in there doing their thing, and you know, they were trying to, you know, kind of get things to the next level with what they were doing with Bill. And then because you had been recording at the studio, I'm assuming you recorded electric guitars with a microphone. Yeah.
Previous to Badly White. So then did you're like, I got this. I mean, it's no big deal. You know, I'll just, you know, I know how to do it, blah, blah, blah. And, or did you kind of fake it till you make it, or you just felt like you were right in the groove right away?
No, I wasn't in the groove right away. No.
So you just learn at moment to moment. You're doing it moment to moment. And is this thing working? I was so impressed with that whole situation where you guys were doing, you know, an official recording.
Well, you think the thing that's interesting, like being in a small market like this, like, and, you know, like, it's like, you don't have, like, if you were an assistant, you know, okay, you get out of school and you move to LA or wherever, and you're an assistant at Sound City. You know what I mean? You're working with the best of the best, and you have great gear, and on some level it's maintained. You know what I mean? And like, you start to take for granted, like, these sounds and these things that happen because it's done by masters. Like, from the beginning, you're observing. You know, it's like, you're not trying to invent it, or you're not trying to, you know, you're working with the palette you have,
Right.
sonically.
Right.
And I don't mean palette, that's not a good word, but like
Well,
the gear,
with
the equipment.
gear and the equipment, yeah.
You know, and you don't
yeah.
know that, like, okay, if you have like a, you have an 1176 and you plug something through it, it's going to sound awesome already.
Right. Right.
You
right,
don't
right.
know that. So you're like trying to move mics around and do
Right.
things to make it sound as close to that as you can.
And as an aside, we kind of had this conversation like last week or something where I felt like it took a long time to understand what the picture should sound like.
Right.
And you were like, we weren't in the room.
No.
We were kind of just doing our own from the beginning.
Yeah.
Which was cool. And we were in great studios with people we've like elbowed with the greats,
Sure.
But like, but to your point, that makes 100%, and that's kind of the story of the band too, where you're just figuring it out, like moment to moment.
Yeah.
And man, that's like, it's cool because it's just the truth.
Yeah, I mean, it's the truth, and I don't know if that's a good or bad thing.
That's good, yeah.
But like you had to like have a broader skill set.
Yeah.
To like be here in this area and like doing this kind of thing.
Yes.
Than you would have if you could just be the artist. And
I mean, the context being like we're in the middle of Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
And there, at the time there were lots of places to play.
Yeah.
But bands would play lots of cover songs just for entertainment, and they were great. And so, but the thing with you guys right from the beginning was like, we want to like write our own songs.
Yeah.
And so the process then of having to figure that out, how do you play a show for like, 3-4 hours sets and work in all your material and keep going like that.
Yeah.
So anyway, that at the beginning, I just thought was like excellent.
Yeah. I mean, it was kind of, I think that, what's it, the Ted Lasso, be curious, not judgmental. It's like that's what it was. Like if you're just kind of working with all these different people and you're just trying to be curious about, well, why does that work and why does that sound different than okay, I got the same drum set here, but the next guy comes in, he sounds 10 times better than the previous guy.
Right on.
Why is that?
Right on.
You know what I mean? And that's the great thing about a studio that people that sit at home with a computer is there's not that sort of community of people coming through, that all have their own little way of doing it. And like I was doing here is like I was doing, I was assisting on, a polka project that I mentioned, and I was doing like a couple like, more like medley things. And then I was doing like, early would have been an early project with David Rose Band.
Oh, right on. Multi-instrumentalist.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, violin, guitar, a lot of these guys I'm still friends with, we were both friends with, Tim Breon, Kim Reichley, and like Jeff Pittenger, it's like with White Witch stuff, and like they were coming down. I mean, like, these are guys, almost 40 years ago that we still
that we still
do
know
things
with.
with. Still know and do things with.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And they were all doing different styles, and you just get curious about how they all kind of go, like if you're in like a heavy rock band or a metal band or something like that, like you think of the word songwriting, you think in terms of like, power and energy and from section to section. And that's kind of like what you consider, those are like the value system, whereas if you're into like folk music, you're like a Dylan of the Dylan school, it's lyric driven. Right on. And real minimal. Instrumentation and like, so it's all different. Everybody's different.
That I think that you back at the studio when I first saw like what you guys were doing, and then like I went away for a while to get a job, and
sure.
By the time I came back, like you kind of had gone through that whole cycle of understanding like kind of production things to aiding in songwriting. Yeah. And man, it was like really, really good to get into that environment. Yeah. 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 I mean,
I mean, it really kind of all comes down to that. It comes down to the artist, and the artist is the artist, and the band is the driver.
Right on.
Of any project, and then you can, that's kind of like a band like U2. They got this team of guys that twist and massage and cut up and do what they do, but they kind of drive it, you know, and but then they're, you know, like they're kind of open to all of it, and that's why they've been able to sort of reinvent themselves and do different things, whether you like that particular style or not. It's like, you know, they've been able to really grow and do different things over time because they were not really kind of real stuck in a lane, you know, like they wanted to know everything about it, you know, and whether it be cutting up a tape or using a mouse.
Well, I mean, to me, that the it's kind of like the more you know, the less you know, kind of thing.
Sure.
It's just the it's still wondrous and daunting always, because it's so hard to make something come through the speakers that is it sounds direct, it sounds simple, it's a story, it hits you emotionally, it has a beat, it has whatever the thing is, and it's so hard to do it. And that's what you get like years later, like, you know, yeah, it's hard, and it was hard back then, but you have the advantage back then of kind of not knowing that.
Sure.
And so you're just plowing through and trying everything.
Yeah.
And you know, it's informative, and like you said, some people have that kind of right away if they have their mentor person that they're following,
Right.
To see it right from the beginning, where you're like, well, yeah, plug that into a great compressor and a great pre, and you just hit the tape a certain way. It's cool, you know, with a great player. It is actually simple, but you don't know any of those things
When you're starting and you don't have that,
so,
you don't
like,
have
yeah.
that mentor. There's no,
you don't have it. And we were like kind of our own. It actually, I mean, your and I story, this is an aside, but like that's kind of the best piece of all that. With like music things, like when you produce my bass parts, or I say, oh, that don't play there on the guitar, or do this or whatever, our suggestions for each other, but then also personally, we're different. We're very much the same, but we're very different too. And so like that, if you don't have that conversation, you don't get anywhere. And so I feel like we had that, like that we were each other's driving force all those years.
Sure.
It was like, so, you know.
Right.
It's nice now to like look back at that again. Origins, #origins.
Yeah. Well, you know, like there's a great story of about like you know, I love this story, and it was like Paul McCartney and John Lennon are working on something. You know what I mean? This is like touching. So, but it was like they were working on something, and they were working on a song, and they're getting frustrated. You know what I mean? They're like getting frustrated. They're trying to write. I don't know what song it was. Like Paul McCartney told this story, and he said he had this story, and they're kind of fighting, and they're like they can't get this song, and they'd write like this, two guitars, you know, like and they'd write like this, and he said, and at one point they're getting like really upset. He said, and John Lennon like just lowers his glasses, looks over him, and goes, "It's only me."
Right on. It's right.
You know,
yeah.
And you know what I mean? And I love that. You know what I mean? It's because it's like that, but that's it. It's like, you know, hey, we're trying to find this. We haven't found it. We'll find it. You know, we'll get it. And that's touching to me. You know what I mean? It's kind of, you know, and that you go through that process, and it's like, and when I'm working with somebody else, you know, that's not you or I. Yeah. You know, you know, like I always try to tell them, you know, I'm like, I'm not going to be hurt if you don't like what I do.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's just because like I've had thousands of ideas accepted.
Right on.
You know what I mean?
Right on.
You know, I mean, you want something else, it's fine. You know, that's cool. Fine. I don't care. It's like, and I got other ideas behind that. You know what I mean? As you do. You know what I mean? I you know, it's the only thing is like when you know somebody's making an obvious error that's objectively an error.
Right. Right on.
You know, like this is going to cost you time and money and
right on.
You know what I mean? And you're making a mistake. But most of the time it's not that. Most of the time it's just taste.
Yeah.
And,
yeah. And those taste things I feel like I've had the luxury of kind of like walking through all that, because if you don't have those like people with all their different tastes to define yours, to help you out, to introduce you to, you know, and all that kind of stuff. I feel personally fortunate to have that from beginning to now, because it's informed so many things. But
sure,
yeah,
yeah,
awesome.
Oh yeah, it's been amazing. Yeah, so yeah,
and that's it. That's the end. That's the end. That's the end of the band. That's the end of it's the end of our lives. We're gonna close this chapter.
That's the end of the beginning.
That's the end of the beginning.
Yeah.
This podcast was produced by Stone State Entertainment.